And we are live.
We are live, The Hunt for Success. Cody Steinman, Ryan McCracken. Today we're here with Mark Wooten and Mychal Dynes. Did I get your last names correct?
Yes.
The Little Conejo guys, that's what I always say. I go, can't wait for the Little Conejo guys to come on.
I call it Little Cone Joe.
People thought we were going to be an ice cream shop. Little cone, like ice cream cone, Joe. When we put our sign out.
So you guys started Little Conejo. It's been about 2 years now?
Yeah, about that, year and a half.
And it's a Mexican or taco joint luckily, just down the street from our office. And Mark, you're the head chef, is that correct?
Yep.
And then Mychal, owner-operator?
Yeah, Mark's an owner as well.
Okay.
Mark has kitchen experience, and I have front of house experience. Tended bar for a long time and worked in some management positions.
Okay. When we were kind of getting ready for the show, you talked about 2%. Was it 2% of restaurants make it past the first year?
Second best, make it 2 years, I guess.
Make it 2 years.
Yeah.
So you guys are in that small minority.
We're close. Yeah, it's been a really fun experience.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because on this show, we try to relate everything to success, and we've had all sorts of people on at different levels of success, whether it's somebody that's becoming a minimalist or a CEO or Olympic athlete. But I've always been fascinated by owners of restaurants, because it almost seems like it has to be a passion project with a statistic like that. So maybe talk about, why did you decide to go from bartending, managing into ownership? Because I've always fantasized about that, right? I think everybody does fantasize, who likes restaurants, about opening your own. It seems like it would be so much fun, right? So what made you guys take that leap?
I think for me, I just got to a point where I either needed to own my own or get out of the industry, and getting out of the industry wasn't an option for me. I love food and beverage. I love going out to restaurants. It's just been a part of my life since I was younger. My parents were in the industry also, so I've worked for people who employ people that kind of do things, and it's just, I think for me to work those long hours, it had to be my own. If I was working the same hours for someone else, I think it would have wore me out. So,
And it seems like you kind of want to do things your own way. At least I would, right? I mean, how often do people go to a restaurant and they start critiquing? Like, if this was my place, I would do this differently, or I would change this menu, or I would fire that person, or make them wear this uniform. I mean, was that part of it too?
Yeah, I think for me, throughout my career, just learning things that you want to do and learning things that you don't want to replicate that happen in a particular restaurant. And then for me, it just was time to apply that stuff.
You just kind of
bad habits, all the way from the way you interact with people to bad cooking technique, But yeah, I felt confident that it could take the next step when Mychal.
That you could do better than what was going on at that restaurant? Or different?
Better, but just test it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that you got to have a grip of confidence, right? That, hey, I think I could do this just as well or better, or try it my way, right?
Yeah.
I think everywhere I've ever worked, you get something down. You feel like you understand what the place is, and you get into a routine. And then I felt myself going backwards. I think the first year, 2 years, 3 years, in almost any profession, you are learning, growing, figuring stuff out, and then you find a point where it's like driving home from work. You don't even remember driving. I come in, I do this every single day. And so a year and a half into this, I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing yet. We're still figuring things out, and it's a new challenge every day.
Well, and it's funny the way you describe that, because it seems like, I'm 38, Ryan's 39. We're kind of in a similar entrepreneurial style business. And it seems like there's people that are designed for the post office job, the 9 to 5, clock in, clock out. and get in that routine, and they find a sense of security in that, right? Because it's easy for somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit to kind of go, oh yeah, there's no way I could go back to having a boss, or I could, I felt like I wasn't growing anymore, or I wasn't achieving the goals, and that flame starts to get bigger and bigger. But a lot of people are opposite. They could never imagine putting themselves out there and putting their money and their financials at risk by opening a restaurant. So, yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
I was kind of thinking about what have been some of the things that you guys have implemented, or has there been things where you're like, I'm definitely going to implement that in my new restaurant, that has either worked or not worked? Because a lot of times when you're not the boss, it's really easy to look at something and be like, I absolutely would or wouldn't do that particular thing. And then all of a sudden you are the boss and you're like, oh, now I see why they did it that way, or didn't do it that way.
Well, yeah, and to kind of piggyback on Ryan's question, you guys, for those who aren't familiar with our area, we're right across the Columbia River from Portland. And Portland, over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a boom in the kind of that hip, trendier restaurant scene, right? And you guys were really the first to bring it into Vancouver. Because you guys opened, and then about the same time, they redid Five Corners, where there's a pizza joint over there, and then there's the barbecue joint. I can't remember. Not Smoke and Oak. There's one over there, but then Smoke and Oak opened, and I think you guys kind of started that, of moving those restaurants, those kind of restaurants into Portland.
Well, I grew up in Vancouver, and I always felt like there was a need for just a serious restaurant downtown. I felt like there were always good restaurants, but they always seemed to be very similar. I would credit Joey from Nonavo as being the first to go in there, and there's people that love him and hate him, but for him to go in and do things his way, be a real kind of serious, in-your-face chef, I just really admired that, and I felt like that was the kind of neighbor that we'd like to have. He has always been supportive, and felt like he had our backs from day one,
and so you guys saw a major
does a
opportunity,
great
right?
job. Yeah.
Because Portland or Vancouver was crying for it, a decent restaurant. Where I live in Richfield. There's my choices for restaurants are Applebee's, and then you go down another exit and there's another Applebee's. And
I think that one just went out of business.
The one on 99?
Yeah.
Because Vancouver used to have, they used to have some good restaurants, like Clancy's was always a good one, Bortolami's, where it was kind of local owned,
I just was talking to somebody about Onslow's.
I don't know.
He's the mayor of Ridgefield, actually. His family owned a restaurant that was on the block we were on.
Really?
Yeah, I live in Ridgefield too, but I think it's just a product of Portland, kind of like we were saying, Portland just kind of bursting at the seams, and but it's also our culture here in the Northwest. We are interested in food and curious about food, and just every generation seems to be more knowledgeable about food. My kids, I talk to my kids about this all the time, seeing the stuff that they do in the kitchen now is so light years ahead of what I was doing at their age. They're interested in different vegetables and fruits and how you cook things, and they're making themselves fried egg sandwiches in the morning, and I wasn't doing anything like that at their age.
How old are your kids?
11 and 9. Or he'll be 9 in a couple weeks.
Do they watch the food channels?
Absolutely.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because I have a 6.5-year-old, and she watches one of her favorite shows, Good Eats.
Yeah.
With Alton Brown.
Yeah, chefs are rock stars.
That's crazy.
And when I was growing up, I didn't know any chefs. I knew people my parents worked with, but besides,
Julia Child.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can really credit that to, like the Netflix style shows and just cable TV and all the cooking shows, and then just social media in general.
I remember I was in high school when Emeril Lagasse came out, and he was like the first, new name, where he kind of became a character. The bam, that whole thing. But
I like the guy, the salt down his forearm.
Oh yeah, Salt Bay.
who does that?
He's in Dubai. It's like a kind of famous meat cook. I think they eat a lot of
Yeah.
meat and bread and that part of the world. But yeah,
Sprinkles
Lots
of
of
salt
memes,
down
like-
the forearm.
Well, and we were talking about that pizza show, and there was a guy on there. He's called the food porn, or he started taking pictures of food on Instagram when Instagram first came out, and now he's a huge celebrity, and goes in, and he was doing they were doing one on a $2,500 pizza that had caviar and gold on it and everything, and he's like, I'm only going to post this if they give me the pizza for free. And you have all these other crazy celebrities that are popping out that aren't even chefs. So why tacos?
it's been a passion and love of mine for my entire life. From Central California. Just half of the population of the small town I was from is Mexican, and it's just been a part of my life. Went from Central Valley to LA, like downtown LA, for 7 years. Moved up to the Pacific Northwest to go to culinary school, and I thought I wasn't going to find Mexican food here, so I just started cooking it like crazy.
Yeah.
Just on my own time, and worked at a bunch of restaurants in Portland. But Mychal came to me and wanted to do an idea. Go ahead.
Well, sorry to interrupt. Were any of the restaurants you were working at, were they any of them Mexican restaurants?
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, the restaurant I was at before we started was high-end Japanese tasting menus.
Yeah, I remember Mark saying that tacos were his research project, and that always fascinated me because I was like, it's true. Why are some so much better than others? Like, why can you make this out of a truck, and it like makes my heart like overjoyed, but I go to a restaurant and I order tacos and I'm like, these are terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
These, I think we've all had a moment where you're outside of a taco truck and you're like, man, if I could get a beer too,
Yeah.
I would stay here. And that's a lot at the core of, our concept. I think it was just like, we wanted to go to a place like this, and it just didn't exist.
Yeah.
Why is it that some foods that are so simple, like a taco or pizza, people get so passionate about? Because, I mean, tacos are pretty simple, right? You got meat, a tortilla, cheese, some veggies, right?
You'd think it's simple,
Yeah.
but I mean, we were talking about Conejo, and they do a great job too. And but we're taking our corn and then taking it through a process called nixtamalization.
Called what?
Nixtamalization.
Tell me about that. Nixtamalization?
Yeah, so nixtamal is the process where basically you take raw dried corn and make it into a dough for tortillas.
Okay.
Mark can tell you way more about it than I can, I'm sure, but
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, dry field corn. Many different land races, back to specific families and communities. Just the hand selecting for genetics for as long as people have been growing corn for food.
Well, and corn's changed a lot over the last 100 years, right?
Yes.
Because, just listening to other podcasts, corn 100 years ago or even older than that would look nothing like the corn today, right? Because it's been so modified. Is that true?
Yeah, there's popping up, and it's made its way into Portland and into our restaurant. We're getting corn grown by specific farms in Oaxaca, Mexico. It's it's changed a little bit in the few months that we've been using this particular corn, but it's a red, and the stuff we're getting now is a little bit more purple. It might be from the guy down the street. Very small operations, but
What makes corn red or purple? I thought corn was all yellow.
the genetics, hand selected for color, flavor,
Wow.
yeah, all by hand.
it's a grain. I mean, just like there's purple broccoli and, different colors of carrots, and just like,
And then every year you can pull those
Kernels?
cobs of corn that you have the characteristics that you happen to prefer, and every year it gets stronger, those traits.
Interesting.
Gotcha. So, so talk to me more about this. So once you got your corn, And then is it just corn and water?
Corn, water, and in Spanish they call it cal. It's calcium hydroxide.
Okay.
From, if you look at bag of tortilla chips or tortillas, it says water, corn, maybe salt, trace of lime. That's limestone.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what that does is creates an alkaline, a solution. You cook the corn in that. The pericarp of the corn, the outside of the corn, is very hard, very hard for our bodies to digest and absorb nutrients from. However, this came to be, this process, nixtamalization, it gelatinizes that outer portion, changes the aroma, and well, it changes the corn quite drastically.
It's like a chemical reaction.
Sure.
Yeah, and then that pericarp, then because it's gelatinized, can come off.
So were you guys doing this from day one? This was something that you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in our plan, but
So how long did you mess around with tortillas before you got to the point where they're at now?
years. I've been growing food for 7 years, but we're trying to find corn that we could grow in this region to make nixtamales and make tortillas out of. I found a couple varieties, but our latitudes
The season's really
it's
short.
not
Yeah.
the best for growing large volumes of corn.
Yeah. Enough needed for a restaurant.
Because this needs to dry on the stalk throughout the growing season.
Gotcha.
Yep. So our season's a little short.
Starts
But
raining too soon.
anyway, had some success experimenting on our own at the farm, and then I've just been playing with it for years.
Does water make a big difference? Like, because that's the big thing in pizzas, right? Is New York pizzas are supposed to be taste a certain way because of the water, and same in California. Does the water make a difference?
I think it does. The flavor changes because of the alkaline solution. Like ramen noodles are alkaline, so they're made with alkalinized water. And it has this pretty strong aroma to it. And actually, ramen noodles and nixtamal kind of have a similar alkaline aroma to it. But the nuances of the water, I don't know if the mineral content, how that plays with it. We just kind of started making it with the water that we had and liked it and didn't question it very much beyond that.
I'm sure there's part of like terroir with that, which is, like a wine. That was a French word that there is no translation for. It's just like the products of where a place is grown and created have a role in how it tastes. So I think, there's terroir in our tortillas. Even though the same process goes through in the place where the corn is, they taste a little different.
So do you think that could kind of transform tacos a little bit? Because with pizzas, you have the New York, Chicago, and then part of that documentary I was watching was the California Pizza Kitchen. How they wanted to create the California style pizza. Do you kind of see the same thing happen with tacos?
Throughout the different states of Mexico, all the tortillas are different from place to place, pretty much. And that's because, just back to the source of the corn and personal preference, I think. Different thicknesses,
interesting.
Different tastes for the color and
What kind of food they're putting into it and
yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
Like some things are just better here than there, and we eat a lot of this up here, but an hour south, they don't get as much of that.
Gotcha.
So we source our corn's all coming from Mexico. We get it through a tortilla factory in Portland called Three Sisters Nixtamal.
Okay.
I just wanted to kind of shout them out.
Yeah,
'cause
absolutely.
Once we got our tortilla
So they
equipment-
put that right in their title.
Yes.
Right in their
Yeah.
name.
Once we got all of our equipment from Mexico to produce tortillas at a high volume because we do a lot of volume at the restaurant. They trained us, gave us all their recipes, and didn't expect
They're
anything
have been a
in
big
return.
help
That's
to us
awesome.
and
Yeah.
super supportive all along
They
the
just
way.
want good tortillas in the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were amazed that we even wanted to do that, or Mark wanted to do that, because they made an entire business just on making tortillas. Which is why, I think our tacos are so good. They're
They're-
on.
They're like excited to share the stoke of tortillas.
Yeah, it's. I can't remember what they said, but they shared some crazy stat that it's only like 6 restaurants on the West Coast that do
Make their own.
nixtamalization.
Wow,
maybe
That's
even
crazy.
less.
So-
Conejo, I believe, buys the dough product from Three Sisters, and then I think they might hand press them there. But just wanted to approach it a little bit different. If we're starting from the dry product, we have a little bit more control
Yeah.
because it's stable at that point. And if we were to buy the dough, it has a shelf life for sure, and it's rapid.
Well, and by them slowing down enough to teach you guys how to do it, it bonds that relationship, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, over time.
definitely.
I just like we were talking about the terroir. I think we use we use the same corn, similar recipe, but our tortillas taste different than Three Sisters tortillas.
Yeah.
They're not any, I couldn't say one's better or worse. They're just
Different.
different. Yeah.
So is your guys' tortillas constantly like evolving then? Or are you like at a spot where you're like, this is the one we're mass producing?
Yeah, we're at a spot that we like. We're blending 2 different types of corns together and cooking them together, which I think it's a little unusual even to the guys over at Three Sisters. But we're using a really floury white corn and then a yellow one that has a lot of aroma and flavor to it. But the floury one gives a little bit more pliability and to our tortillas. And we just arrived there basically just learning as we went along.
So do you, I would assume other chefs in your kitchen make the tortillas too, right? What's it like when you handed that responsibility off, letting them know, well, that's a big responsibility if you're basing everything off the way you customize these tortillas?
Yeah, we have a specific recipe and ratio of the two corns together and temperature that we cook it, and then the corn, after it gets cooked, it rests for a while in that solution. I'm still a big part of the milling of it, because then we bring that corn down, wash that solution off of it, and then grind it through a molino with 2 volcanic stone millstones.
Crazy.
Yeah. So the original is called a metate. It's a lava rock with a bar. You've seen like videos or pictures of women
Yeah.
grinding
Yeah.
the corn on this lava rock. So the technology then stepped up to 2 stones, like top fed via gravity, and then pulls the corn through, and then one stationary and the other one. But my role still is that I haven't really passed off. Once that dough comes down, just feeling it.
Yeah. Getting the right coarseness.
Water, there's a continuous stream of water going in too, because it's a wet milling process. So just the feel of the moisture content and the fineness of the mill.
Mark's one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and he has a hand in 99% of the, hundreds of thousands of tortillas that we've served to people in the year and a half.
Well, yeah, because the key is consistency, right? I've heard lots of chefs say that's the key to a good restaurant is consistency. And it seems like with something that you've made your baby like that for however many years, it'd be hard to hand that off.
It's also like dangerous. The mill is like a pretty dangerous piece of machinery. That,
Is it?
Yeah, we have some nerves when anybody else is doing anything with both of these things. We got them straight from Mexico, and it's not the same
So I'd love to see those. someday.
regulations.
I was just thinking, you guys either need a viewing window, like at the Tillamook Cheese Factory, like we need a viewing window to like watch you guys do that, or video it and have it like playing on a loop,
Yeah.
like up on a TV in the restaurant.
Yeah, we really wanted to make that available for customers, but so the mill's downstairs, and then we were making all of our tortillas upstairs, because then that dough comes up, goes into kind of a sheeting style tortilla roller, and they come out a little conveyor belt, and then we cook them from there. So people could at least see the equipment, but now everything's downstairs.
Your
just as
kitchen
we've
is so
grown.
cool how it's set up to
Thank
where
you.
everyone, there's nothing higher than the counter, right? So
Yep.
everybody can watch you guys cook.
Yeah.
So you said you grow a lot of your own food.
We do.
What about do you hunt or fish? Do you do a lot of wild game cooking?
No. Yeah, not for this place.
No, but in your personal life.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Dang it.
I don't either.
You should.
If I had time to, maybe someday.
But you do. You gotta
Right now
get
we're-
your kids cooking with wild game.
Yeah, I love it and respect it, but yeah, it's
Because that's kind of a hot thing right now. I mean, hunting's blown up. It's bigger than it's ever been. But thanks to certain people like Steven Ranella that come out with all these wild game cookbooks and shows, that's kind of the next big thing, I think.
Yeah, I hope so.
Talk about just the time that that you have to invest as a restaurant owner, how basically passionate you have to be about it.
I was having this conversation with a member of our staff. You know, it's like, it seems like as soon as we feel like things are under control and we have people in place and maybe we don't have to be there as much, something happens where it's like, you're wrong. You were kidding yourself, and now you have to get back to work again. Like, not that you were not working, but yeah, it's like I've washed dishes several nights there and closed the dish pit down, and it's never ending. I mean, and that's what makes restaurants great when the owner is and the owners are involved like that. Our staff talks about that all the time. Like, we feel a connection to this place because you guys are here all the
they're
time.
they're surprised oftentimes
Yeah.
Well,
that we're in the trenches with them.
You can feel that too, because I was in there one night, close to closing time, and my wife and I were there to have a couple drinks, and you could feel like the culture among the staff, right? And that's really hard to achieve. I think a lot of people fail there, especially in the restaurant business. Seems like the front end staff at most restaurants are disgruntled, right? But your bartender, I can't remember his name,
Keith?
Tall guy.
covered in tats.
Oh,
Justin?
Justin. Yeah, it was towards closing time. We didn't realize that we were there so close to closing time. And when we did, we're like, oh, is it all right if we have a drink? He goes, absolutely. Super friendly, happy. And that really you could feel that the ownership is there and everyone wants to be there and everyone's cooperating.
I think that's what we kind of glazed over Ryan's question earlier.
What
but
we
like,
did different, or what we brought to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always wanted to, we were trying to, it's part of the design of the place. Like we talked about early on, breaking down the barrier between front of house and back of house, just making it like, hey, we're all in this together. We're just trying to provide really excellent food and drink and service for
Along
these
with the
people.
guests too, we're all
Yeah.
just there together. Like, let's have fun and eat good food, and let's communicate about it. You know,
Yeah, so like we hope that people are happy working there, and it feels like a family. I mean, it has positives and negatives. I mean, there's times when like we're just too close, but I think everyone feels like they have a voice and they can say, hey, this is bothering me, and then we work on it and move forward. I think we have a good standard for that. Like, everybody can bring whatever is bothering them to the table, and we address it and move forward.
and there's about 22 people we're taking care of right now. It's a group effort.
We didn't think, we were like, I'll just start small, couple people, us, couple people we've worked with before, and it's become something that we always hoped it would, but I don't know if we ever saw it.
Did that come pretty easy, or did you find it to be a steep learning curve going from, managing other people's restaurants to going into yours and kind of being responsible of getting that culture right the first time around?
It was. I learned more in 2 years of doing this place than 14 years in the industry before that, I think. It reminds me of having kids. Like, you hear all this advice and you feel like you know some things about it, and like you feel like you know what you're going to expect, but until it's your own, same with the kids. Like, until you have your own kid, like, you have no idea what it all entails and how much it means to you and what it's going to cost, what you might have to sacrifice, all that stuff.
Yeah. You said when you were talking about kind of culture is you want to be close. You want everyone to be close, but not too close, right? Have you been on the opposite end of that where you've gotten too close to your staff, or maybe talk about that a little.
I've something that's arisen for me lately. Started with a small core group of people. Most of them are still with us. Separating myself from being a bro on the line, working with these guys, and then going and having a drink after work. It's a different type of bond than I am their boss. So that's been challenging for me to, as we go along.
Yeah, where do you draw those lines?
Some people I can't manage as effective. Some of the people who have been with us forever, I'm not as effective manager to them as the newer people.
Yeah.
Because just the bond that was created in the beginning, which is great and fine, I think.
It's a big part of the industry, right? I mean, it's why we fell in love with it in the beginning, at least for me. Like, it was all like, you worked hard together, side by side, you had each other's back, and then at the end, you go out and have a beer together, and you come back and do it all again the next day, and it's hard to not do that, especially in the beginning when it was just like 8 of us.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's a really good sports analogy in here somewhere, because it's just like a coach is there. They're there for all the trainings, there for all the games, there for all the motivational speeches before and after, the one-on-one coaching, the discipline. But you never see a coach going out to the bars with the team afterwards, right?
Yep.
Because and there's something about that line that once you cross it, you think, and for me, you want it to feel like a family, right? But once you cross that line, it's really hard to go back.
Yep.
It is. It's hard too, because coach, you're older. Like, you don't go out to the same places and drink the same things together. Like, we just tie it with all those people and around the same age and have a lot of the same interests. And
So in order to deal with our growth, we've been including more structure, kind of conventional style, chain of command, just so we can deal
Adding a
with
couple
it
more
effectively.
layers in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's working out. I mean, all the guys who started with us from the beginning are, most of them are still there, and they're, behind it.
So what is it about 2 years that a lot of restaurants tend to fail as they approach that 2-year mark?
Or they don't even make it, correct?
yeah, I think it has a lot to do with fluctuation and just sales and cash flow and everything else. Because that was another thing that was a quick learning curve. Like, our world now is a lot of credit cards, and they don't process them after.
That's how you and I met, was over a credit card.
Right? Yeah.
Because I needed a copy of my receipt.
Yep. But you don't get the money from Friday until Monday. So
And that's how close it can be sometimes.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you're just
make the payroll.
Yeah.
and then you don't have Friday, Saturday, Sundays, money until Monday, and it can be hard. I think, especially too when you have a good week, and as owners you want to be like, let's party. That was awesome. It was a great week, but it's like, oh, I got to pay taxes in another week after that. So, or payroll's coming up in 2 weeks that I got to save for. This money has already been spent. It's tough to convince yourself that that's not yours yet.
So who manages the accounting and the books and stuff? Do you guys do that, or do you have somebody else that?
We actually just started having somebody else do that. We were going to a different accounting firm that didn't have the best experience with. And a regular guest actually said, you know, he kind of made some jokes about tax season and how you should be all the way ready. And I was like, we're not, man. Like, we need some help if you want to. And I met with him, and it was just a really nice environment and experience. He has an office, his garage, he converted to his office, and it's just at his house, and his wife handles a lot of it too. It's been really good. It's been a relief for me, because
I'm sure.
I've you know, struggled my way through it fine enough, but also think that we're just poised to get to a point where there's no way I could do it. You know,
Well, it seems like it eats up some of your creative freedom too, right? Because you only have so much time in the day and so much energy to focus on things. So if you get to free up the bookkeeping, that gives your time for your creativity to go other places, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's tricky too, because you know, we sell some retail stuff that's taxed differently, and
Like T-shirts and stuff.
yeah, or hot sauce, tortillas to go. Like, we can't charge tax on that.
You can't charge tax on food to go.
Right. It's almost like we're a grocery store.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But if you
Because
sit,
it's not prepared.
right, but if we prepare you food to go, we charge tax on that. So it's like
Interesting.
just so layered, and I'm thankful that we have him. Christopher McCann's his name.
What about, I was talking with another restaurant owner that when he was newer in the business, one thing that I didn't even think about was, you know, you talking about Friday's pay doesn't come in till Monday, and ingredients. One of the things that he was talking about, he's like, as you're growing and whatnot, you have to figure out how much ingredients you need, and then there's going to be waste based on that, especially if you're talking like, you know, avocados. Like, are they going to go bad before we actually get to use them? And I'm sure that plays a huge part in, you know, like cost and budgeting and really trying to dial in, you know, your expenses and whatnot.
That's funny you mentioned avocados. How many different grades of avocado are there? There's like, they sell them in different ripeness levels. So I think
Yeah.
there's like 3 or 4 grades that you can buy.
Crazy.
Yeah,
So-
what I've implemented pretty recently, I just buy them green now, and then we do our own kind of ripening program
Yeah.
in the restaurant. Gives us a little bit more control, and they're a lot less expensive if you buy them.
It's like you got to
Green.
pay
Really?
them to ripen them.
Huh.
Yeah.
It seems
Gotcha.
like it would be. Yeah, well, I guess that makes sense, but it seems like buying them green would be more expensive.
Yeah,
Well,
you
you
pay a
can't-
little
can't use
premium
them.
to have them control that part of it.
You can't use them yet, though.
Is it
They're
a certain?
hard, and you can barely even dig into it. They're
Yeah.
like little rocks.
Huh. But can't you control? Isn't that easier to control your waste that way?
Waste for us, luckily, since we've opened, because we've been so busy, it's been more about trying to keep up than what
Have
we
you had
waste.
nights where you ran out and you're like, "Yep, no
Oh,
more
we
tacos
run out a
tonight"?
lot. Yeah, of specific
Yeah.
items. I was
So-
just trying to gauge.
sometimes
what
it's sorry to interrupt, but sometimes it seems like restaurants almost use that as a gimmick, right? Like barbecue joints. Once
Yep.
it's out, it's out.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
In my
Um,
opinion, I think that should be a thing.
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of the next step for maybe not everyone in the Northwest, but at least some people in our area to realize that, you know, it's hard to make good food.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of planning, product, sometimes marinating, cooking,
We have some pretty intense processes to
all
everything.
kinds of
that we
things
do.
that are challenging. And man, if you think that you can make this gigantic batch of salsa and then just make it again,
Yeah.
I can't do that at the snap of a finger anymore. You know, like
And
that-
we're not opening cans,
yeah, we're making 8 or 9 different salsas,
all from raw product.
all from
crazy.
scratch. And yeah, it's just I think that's actually Mitch Montgomery from Relevant Coffee really opened my eyes to that, because he was saying, you know, coffee, it might come in contact with 50 different people before it comes to you to sip. And that just blew my mind. Like, wow, just from someone who planted it, someone who harvested it, tended the field, and then all the way through the roasting process to getting it into the coffee shop. Like, just drinking coffee from halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Pretty marvelous. I think we're pretty fortunate that way.
You know, it seems like there's two revolutions going on right now. You have the blockchain, robot, and AI revolution going on right now. But it also seems like there's this artisan revolution going on, where more and more in almost all industries, as the big box came and knocked all the mom and pop shops out, now the big boxes are starting to go out, right? Because of Amazon. We just lost Sears, and some other ones are struggling to stay on. It seems like there's this big wave of artisans coming out. We were talking about this with Elton the other day. Like fly tying has always been a really bad industry to own a store that sells fly tying materials. But now you're starting to see them pop up because more and more people are getting into it. You have this big revolution going on right now in fly tying. Restaurants, I think, are definitely similar, where now you start to see some of these mom and pops come back into the market and focus on something that only they do at a really high level. Do you guys see that too?
I hope so.
We
Yeah, I
just look
think-
at microbrews.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a natural balance to the progression of technology, that the kind of the fundamental old school artisan stuff is there as well. But also I think what's fueling the artisan part is our availability to information.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like we can,
Teach yourself how to make
Yeah,
tortillas.
look at
We can-
Neeks them all up there.
like that, instead of in my lifetime, I'd have to plan a day to go to the library and spend the entire day like
Going through card
pulling,
catalogs.
yeah,
Borrow my
pulling
grandma's
books and then get them
encyclopedia
home,
set.
and then by that time, for me at least, I'm like pretty much on to the next thing before I
went
can
on
even
a-
get the information I
Yeah.
desired.
I'm not a chef by any means, although I did work as a chef when I was in one of college at the Heathman. But I did that yesterday. I went into a total rabbit hole on pizza dough, and by the time I went to bed, I had flour from Italy in my shopping cart, canned tomatoes from California in my shopping cart. I had a new pizza stone all on Amazon that's coming this week for my daughter and I to make pizzas. But I mean, I was on the internet forever last night, getting to read all these other artisans that make pizza dough and what goes into it. And there's cool websites and blogs and
Have you tried? You familiar with Ken's Artisan Bakery? Highly recommend his bread book, and he has a pizza book too. He won a James Beard Award for one of them. It's in Northwest Portland.
I've heard of it.
Bakery. He has a pizzeria in Southeast and another restaurant called Trifecta.
What's the name of his book?
The pizza book. Actually, I
It's
actually
like
have it
flour,
if you want.
water, salt.
Flour, water, salt,
Yeah.
yeast.
Oh yeah,
But his pizza dough recipe is the bomb.
I'm gonna have
He has
to
like
check it out.
he has like 3 or 4 different versions. I did like an overnight. I built a wood oven out on our farm one
Nice.
year. Made pizzas out there. I was very surprised how awesome the dough was.
And you use his recipe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it. And I was thinking that with the tortillas too. With pizza dough, really, there's just flour, salt, yeast, water, sugar, right? So how could there be so many different variations? How could pizza dough be so different if there's only 3 or 4 ingredients?
I think the pizzeria, they do Neapolitan style, so that's like regulated like by a DOC for wine or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you can own, like no oils allowed in the dough
Yeah,
at all.
'Cause
It's
that's more
really
of a New
just
York
those
thing, right?
ingredients.
The oil.
I think, there's, taken out of that restricted way that they do it in Napoli. If you can, go wherever you want with it, but
Yeah.
it's like pretty interesting.
So he has a store in downtown Portland too.
He has more of a New York style slice place at the Pine Street Market. I've just known these guys forever, so I know so much off the top of my head. Pine Street Market, he's got a little pizza window in there. The bakery, I mean, he's the best or one or two best bakers in Portland
I'm gonna
Our-
check-
and in the country.
Our manager, Melissa Jobert, she's Mark's partner on the farm. She worked for him for a long time, and he's a good dude, really talented. The pizza shop has a really killer wine list too. It's a good spot.
This is fascinating to hear all this, like the behind the, I feel like you guys need like little factoids at your tables, like that go into talking about all these different, the farm and like everything that really goes into it. Cause we get served a taco and it's like, this is a good taco, but like just knowing like the behind the scenes stuff makes me even more excited for the next time I come in and to really like take in the experience, if you will.
Well, your customers get to be part of it, right?
It's
so.
fun to share, but we talked about that in the beginning too. Like we don't want to ram that stuff down anybody's throat too, because I think we get a lot of that where it's like, hey, this is really organic. We worked really hard on this. Just we hope it's good to you, and if you want to hear about it, then we're happy to share with you. But we don't, we talked about that like table tents to talk about where our corn's from. Like I don't know, let's just keep it really simple.
Yeah.
And if people want to know about it or interested in it, we're happy to share with them.
Yeah,
But
they can listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
there you go.
But there is this like cool celebrity we talked about a little bit earlier, culture, but especially like even with just restaurants. When we go to Vegas, we like to stay at the Cosmopolitan, and they have their food court. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's dope. They have a lot of the celebrity chefs' restaurants, all from New York, in there. So they have a fried chicken place that's only in New York. They have the gal that makes the milk ice cream. I think it's called Milk. The restaurant that makes the ice cream taste like cereal milk,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Christina Tosi, the Momofuku
Yeah,
milk bar.
and then it's right next to Momofuku.
Oh, cool.
Momofuku, did I say it right? Momofuku
Momofuku.
is right next door. So they have all these like New York Beauty and Essex, right? All that's Santos restaurant, right?
I'm not
Beauty
sure.
and Essex. Well, anyways, it's this cool culture where you can go and go to all these restaurants that are hot right now in New York.
Sweet.
So it almost kind of feels that way, like that's what's going on in downtown Vancouver on a much smaller scale. And maybe that's a good question to talk about is you guys came in and then just that specific part of downtown Vancouver, which was kind of the dump end of Vancouver for a long time now. It's up and coming. But it seems like there's a lot of those artisan-style restaurants going in. You have Smoke and Oak that just went in a couple years ago. So do you find that kind of competition is good because it fires up that?
I think so. I think
Definitely.
like we were talking about earlier, I think people who are interested in food, they want to eat a variety, and the more the merrier. I think as long as you care about what you're doing and you make something really well, I think people are going to respond to it and hopefully
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Vancouver's kind of a small town, kind of. I guess it's the third biggest city in the state, right? But this whole waterfront project that's going in is really exciting, but it's really high end. As kind of business owners in downtown Vancouver, what do you think about that? About Vancouver going so high end? They're going to have
El Gaucho's going in.
El Gaucho's going in. They have a couple restaurants down there now, but they're really targeting that high end. I mean, their leases on their office space, the condos, the apartments. I heard those apartments they're putting in are going for like $4,000 a month. So as a business owner, when you see that going, I'm sure it's exciting, right? But maybe talk about that a little bit.
We actually met with them before we opened. We were still kind of looking for a spot in Vancouver. Like I said, I grew up in Vancouver and always wanted to have something that resonated with people, and we were just quickly priced out of it. They kind of laughed at us a little bit, like kids are cute, but you should look for another spot. And it doesn't surprise me that El Gaucho is going in there. I mean, it seems like a perfect fit for that. It's got to be high end. I mean, they're charging as high a rent as you can, I think, in this area.
It's Seattle prices. And at first I was kind of almost offended by it because we looked at moving our office down there too, and it's just so expensive, and you start to see these condos go for millions of dollars. But then I started thinking about it could be a good thing because maybe their target tenants aren't the small little restaurant, it's the national companies, the big, large medical fields or different industries like that want to come in, and hopefully that brings the employees in to support the smaller businesses, right? So
We're
And-
thrilled with how it worked out. I mean, I think we landed in the right spot for us, and our landlord's a great guy, fourth generation owner. He's one of the Schofields, and he's just been really supportive for us. And I felt like he took a chance on us a little bit, and yeah, I think he's more concerned with having unique things than making a huge profit off of his properties. I think that's the same with Joey from No Navo. He's a first-time owner, and Max and Ashley at Bearded Brothers, they're first-time owners.
Yeah.
He's really important to him to have locally operated things.
Yeah, well, it's working because all those restaurants are packed all the time. If I'm going to go to Little Conejo, I have to get there before noon. So avoid that line.
Yeah.
And the pizza place, what's it called? I'm sorry.
No Navo?
No Navo. They do the same thing where their pizzas run out. They only have so many pizzas, and then once they're out
Yeah.
for the day.
What's the camaraderie like with, like you kind of started talking about it with No Novo, but the camaraderie with a lot of like, newer business owners, and you guys are all within a handful of blocks of each other. What's that been like?
Supportive.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
fun. I mean, we're all feel like we're. That's what somebody from Low Bar, Tyler from Low Bar, was like. We feel like the new kids in Vancouver, all the first-time business owners down there, we're sharing, a good plumber or a good accountant, or
Yeah.
it helps because you get, unfortunately, the ones that are the best and you can trust aren't always the ones that pop up on the Google search,
Totally. Yeah.
Well, that's good too. It's kind of like that whole everything trickles down, right? So it's good for those smaller referral-based businesses too. So what's next on the horizon for Little Conejo?
Have you been?
Little Conejo Dos?
Oh, we have a food cart in Portland on Mississippi.
Oh,
At Prost, the
Yeah.
big German bar there. It's very cool.
Yeah, we just had a
outdoor area.
record week there actually this week.
Wow.
Sun's
We
out.
had a record week in
Yes,
our
yeah.
restaurant too. Yeah, it was the busiest week we've had in the restaurant, and then the busiest week we had at the cart. So that was cool. But yeah, they're putting a new cover over the patio out there, and
It's really fun to hang out
Oh,
out there.
I love Prost, especially before like hockey games. We'll go to Prost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so there's
it's-
9 carts out there. We're one of them. They approached us to get in there.
Oh, awesome.
Even cooler.
It's been a pretty cool experience so far. We've got, I don't have a ton of time to be down there. I'll open it a couple times a week, but we have a very strong ex-chef de cuisine from a high-end Mexican restaurant in Portland called Chico, X-I-C-O, Jordan Castle. He's like, just kind of like giving him,
The reins.
yes, and it's doing awesome.
yeah, he does a great job for us. And same thing with downtown Vancouver. That all the owners in there are really supportive, and it's just a really cool little community of food carts and beer nerds. And
So how does it feel to do what you guys have done, reached a point of being stable and successful and opening a food truck? And I mean, how does it feel knowing that you took that gamble and it paid off?
Great. It's still what drives me to work as hard as I do.
yeah, I still don't feel like we've made it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still like figuring it out and working hard at it.
Yeah, I'm not planning on
We still
relaxing.
Feel like, yeah, we still feel like we can
Yeah.
get better at a lot of things. But it feels good to, make it through another winter. Definitely feels good to be open. We're open more. We have we just started offering health insurance to our employees.
Awesome.
So that was a
Huge.
Yeah.
big thing that we're proud of. That was something that we wanted to do from the very beginning. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what's next. That's part of having a good accountant. I feel like it gives us a lot of optimism about the future of what else we can do.
As you guys kind of gain experience, do you find, you talked about support, do you find other entrepreneurs in the restaurant field coming to you guys for like a mentorship, coming for advice? I mean, are you finding that or is there anybody you've helped where you kind of get that satisfaction of helping them learn the ropes?
I don't know if anybody wants that from us. But no.
Now there's other food people. Mychal, I don't know his last name. He was the like corporate executive chef for Papa John's,
Papa
Really?
Murphy's.
Papa Murphy's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael's hung out with him a
Met
lot
with
more
him.
than I have, but he's trying to help other different places around town and maybe do his own thing. So I just kind of like brainstormed with him. But I mean, as far as from the business side of it, I think it's been more about creative ideas than.
Do you think it'll be cool? Because I see this happening in your guys' restaurant. Do you think it'll be cool one day where somebody that came to work for your restaurant has a creative idea and they go out and be an entrepreneur, just kind of like where you guys were before you opened your restaurant?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's leather stores and his wife Courtney Stores and Kimberly Bernosky from Noble Rot have been so supportive to us. We both worked there, and I remember we first told them that we were planning on doing something. They were like, "Whatever you want us to help you with, we will help you with." I think it was so cool because I know other people that were kind of like, they got some pushback, like, "Oh, you're leaving me to do your own thing." So I think that's a perspective that I want to emulate if anyone ever wants to do their own thing, because that's, hopefully that's your dream.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine it being really rewarding too, right?
Yeah.
Being there when they, kind of helping them with the ropes and seeing somebody else do a creative idea.
If someone's talented enough to do their own thing, it's tough to lose them, though. So I can see where you would be like, have a little bit of a grudge.
Yeah.
But I think it was really refreshing how supportive they were.
That's cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. And to understand now how hard that probably was for them.
Yeah, well, you have to replace somebody that is really valuable and took something off your plate. There's people I know now that if we lose them, it would be tough to replace them. So I hope that's the way they felt about me, but I know that they always had our back and supported us on doing our own thing.
Oh yeah.
So for the people out there that are listening that maybe have been working on an idea like a restaurant or another sort of business, and they're just on that tipping point of making the jump, what kind of advice do you have somebody like that has a secure job, income's coming in, but they really want to go pursue their passion?
Don't do it. No, just kidding. I think that you just have to be ready to work hard and be ready to sacrifice some things. Just know that you might not be able to pay yourself sometimes, and you got to, make sure you're paying your employees. Unfortunately, there's things that come before. There's a lot of things that come before you, and you got to pay a lot of bills before you can pay your own.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's tough to wrap your mind around. Like I was saying about having kids, like it's tough to wrap your mind around till it's yours, till those things they belong to you. You're in charge of those things and those people.
Do you think that it would be more difficult if you weren't already doing restaurant for work, right? Because a lot of people get passionate about, and you see this a lot with fishermen. Okay, they'll be really passionate about salmon fishing, and then they'll be so passionate that they want to do it every day. So they go get their guide license, and then they start guiding, and then their passion becomes a work, and now they're not enjoying it anymore.
I think you always have to find a balance between, your life and your work. I mean, I love working in restaurants and being in restaurants, but I think you always have to, have a break. I mean, I hear that with golf a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Would you still love golf if you had to do it every day and were under so much pressure? Or is it nice to just go out with your buddies and, playing for $10 instead of having your life on the line for it?
Yeah, because it's a different kind of motivation. Because for you guys, you were already working for somebody else's restaurant, and it sounds like that, hey, I could do this, I could do it better, I could do it different, or I getting creative with it. But when you take something, a passion that's a passion project that's not work related, and now you make that your work. I'm always nervous, because I love fly tying and fishing and that kind of stuff. And your mind starts to wander where you see somebody. I was in a fly shop, I'm not going to say which one, recently, and they were moving locations, and that shop always sucked. They weren't friendly. Their merchandising was horrible. Their prices were horrible. They never had what you needed. And so I started talking with the owner, and I wasn't talking about his business, but he was giving me all these excuses why they were failing. And I was like, man, maybe I'll come by your shop and in a really, really cool part of town and see if I can, make a success out of it. But then it's like, do I want to pursue a passion? Like, would it ruin fly tying for me or fly fishing?
It's
Yeah, it's
possible.
tough.
It definitely changes. What if I can apply it to myself? I'll get very interested in like a particular food stuff, and then like tacos, for example. And then once you just get so deep into them and deconstruct them to all their elements and try and put it back together, it's not about going to the taco cart and just slamming down some carnitas tacos anymore. I still love it, and there's a passion there, but it's just changed my relationship to them.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, and to talk to people that have done it, that have followed their passion. Joe Roeder's a great example. He's been a guest on here a couple times, but he runs the fly shop and guide service in Yakima called Red's Fly Shop. And that guy, Ryan and I went fishing with him, and he's just as passionate about fishing as anybody I've ever met. And that's what he does 7 days a week. So. Well, appreciate you guys coming on. I'm hungry. It's lunchtime. You guys aren't open on Mondays.
We're not.
What's the deal with that? None of those restaurants down there are open on Mondays. Smoke and Oak is closed. Is it just because there's not enough business on Mondays, or is it forced day off?
It's tough. I think in the beginning, it's hard to commit. We were talking about cash flow and everything. It's hard to commit to have so much staff that you can be open all those days, and then we're still there all those days too. But I think Mondays downtown haven't always been great. I think they probably will be, and it'll just keep, just like our businesses continue to grow with the city and the area.
Well, there's going to be a population explosion once all those condos and apartments are done.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we get more people and our staff is more secure, I don't know if we'll necessarily open on Mondays, but we did a mezcal tasting on a Monday with Eduardo from Oaxaca. Eduardo was named mezcal ambassador by the state of Oaxaca. So it was pretty cool. He came and gave this whole presentation about different agave breeds and talked about mezcal in depth, and that was really awesome. Mark made a pozole, so it was something totally different.
We're gonna go hang out with him next month in Oaxaca.
Nice.
Yeah, we volunteered for a agave reforestation project where we'll go work in the field, and he said it's going to be some backbreaking work. I'm actually looking forward to it.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but yeah, it's tough because like we got our grease trap cleaned last week and get the hood cleaned and go in there and like deep clean some stuff. It's just it's nice to have one day to kind of improvise.
Yeah, small independent restaurants. The chefs on site cooking the food, or we're there managing it and working behind the bar. Like, we just have to take one day off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
There's that too. Like,
Michael, when did you decide to dive into the mezcal thing?
I was working at Noble Rot. First time I had mezcal was at Oven and Shaker, which is a pizza place in downtown Portland that does a really great job, has a really great bar program. And I remember it was wild tasting. Never tasted anything like it before in my life. It was like scotch, but it had a tequila edge to it. It was one of the coolest things ever. And then I started making some cocktails with mezcal that I was kind of proud of, and I started to research a little bit about it, and it just kind of pulled me in. It reminds me of studying wine, which I studied for a long time too. But we were talking about terroir. It's very terroir driven, and it's a fascinating spirit. It's the most complex spirit in the world, in my opinion.
And you find that other people are coming to Little Conejo now to kind of experience mezcal and learn more about it, kind of do some research.
Definitely.
Yeah. I just actually we were at Southern, one of our distributors. They said there was a guy from Seattle in there talking about our mezcal selection. And I think we have the largest selection in the area. I don't know if it's the largest selection in the state, but we have over 100 different mezcals.
Wow.
And they're all different and all unique. We do flights with them. Yeah, it's a really intensely varied spirit that, people spend their lives learning how to make and perfecting their recipe. Or
So what's the
How
big
they do it.
difference, not to sound too naive, but what's the big difference between tequila and mezcal?
it's a good question. I think we answer that question 3-4 times a day in the restaurant, which
Yeah.
is a lot of fun for us. Tequila was kind of the fancy mezcal. Tequila, 1975, got a protected name that it can only be made in 5 states, has to be made with Weber Azul agave, so it has certain rules it has to follow, a little bit like champagne, or that's why it's 75. I think they started to see a lot of fake tequilas leaving, or mezcals being called tequila that weren't the same. So they wanted to have this protected name because they were winning awards, and was being distributed all over the world. Now, fast forward to 2011, 8 different states can make mezcal, but the rules aren't as strict. There's different rules, or they're not even rules. They're just like
Guidelines.
kind of. There aren't that many though. A lot of these places have been making mezcal for a couple hundred years, so they just make it the same way. But now, the body in Mexico that decides these rules, they kind of took their practices that they were already doing and said it has to be done this way to be called this. There's different levels now. Tequila's kind of made in a factory, and mezcal is usually made in the backcountry. There's some mezcal being made in a factory, but it has a different designation. There's such a wealth of information about mezcal that you could spend your life studying it and drinking it, and you'll never know it all. It's a lot like wine.
Yeah. It's a whole different type of small batch.
Yeah, it reminds. I think, studied wine, then I got into bourbon for a little bit. Bourbon had a big boom, and I was studying bourbon, and the more you study bourbon, kind of the less the romance you feel for it.
Why is that?
I think
'Cause I'm a bourbon guy.
it was made a certain way, and then it's not made that way anymore, and there's so much marketing involved in it, and a lot of the stories are really great, but they're not true. George Washington's rye whiskey, and Elijah Craig never made any whiskey. There's just all kinds of really great stories that are mostly marketing. But then you look at mezcal, and mezcal is being made today still in the same humble handcrafted way that they were making bourbon
Are
in the
there
beginning.
is anybody in the U.S. making mezcal like that?
No, it's got to be made in Mexico. I mean, there's people making agave spirits, but they're closer to tequila. You can there's agave growing in California, but it's funny, there's 200 different breeds of agave in Mexico. There's something about the narrow landmass and how it's right by the equator. The breeds they mutate, kind of like we were talking about the corn. They mutate within the field or in the wild, and then they have this whole new breed.
Tequila just uses the one because that's they're designated to do that, but all those other varieties are pretty much accessible for mezcal.
They're making mezcal from
That's
about
why they're so varied.
45 different breeds of agave, and like I said, there's 200 in the state. So I think we've scratched the surface only.
So did you go down there and just kind of go on a mezcal hunt?
Not yet. We went to Mexico City. That was a blast. We just kind of ate and drank our way through the city. There's mezcalerias in Mexico City that are pretty awesome.
Now, is it easy for all those smaller mezcal distilleries to import to the U.S.?
Most of them are imported by a third party. A lot of the people that make them are just humble farmers that do it the same way they were taught by their dad or their grandpa or their grandmother or whoever. It's kind of a generational thing that just gets passed down, like sort of like a shoemaker in the village. Like, this guy makes shoes, this family, they make mezcal, they've been making it the same way forever. You know, you go to certain people for different needs.
So does the importer go down there and just start looking for good mezcals, then they find a family that's making it that doesn't know how to do that part of the business, come in and say, we want to import?
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of red tape getting stuff over the border, as we know. I mean, and it's getting harder and harder to get mezcal here and anything really from Mexico.
Well, I'm not a mezcal connoisseur, but I know when I've been to Mexico, there are some tequilas that you can't get in the U.S. that taste way different. Trying to remember, it's the Jose Cuervo Tradicional, I think.
Yeah.
I remember you can buy it. The bottle looks the same here, but it's different. It tastes completely different.
Yeah, there's a lot like that. I mean, it's still, they don't really understand why we like mezcal so much. They just kind of make it to share with their village, and they don't think that way. You know, they don't have like an entrepreneurial spirit where they're like, I want to get my mezcal to America so I can make a bunch of money. They're like, we just make it, like, we have a lot, we can't drink it all, but we had all these agave ready, so we made a batch, and we have some left over. They'll drink it to like celebrate a birthday or a wedding or something like that. But
I never thought about that way, but bourbon is all about capitalism. I mean, moonshining was to sell, to make money, right? To bootleg.
yeah, and now, I mean, that's what I was saying about marketing. Like, even though this brand is really old, it's being made by, you know, the same company that makes 25 different brands. They just bought that brand when they went out of business, and they own it. They make it all.
Well, I'm excited to hear how your trip down there goes.
Yeah, we're excited to go to it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be one of those trip of a lifetime kind of things.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, you talk about the families that are making it. I wonder what it's like doing that down in Mexico, when you have a corrupt government and you have cartels and you have all these other pressures that an entrepreneur or a grower or somebody in the States doesn't necessarily have.
I should pull up an image of a palenque just so we can see,
Yeah, pull it up.
Yeah.
have a visual
How do
on
you-
P-A-L-
where this stuff's made.
ENQUE.
Yeah, I went on the rabbit hole of bourbons kind of before the bourbon thing got really hot. Now rye's really hot, right? That's the big, everyone's coming out with ryes.
Maybe
Yeah,
add
just click
mezcal.
on that Palenque Wikipedia page. Oh, that's the temple.
All right, so let's go back and then follow it up with mezcal.
Yeah.
Mexico City, we went to a place
There we go.
called Palenquito.
Those images.
Yeah, you can click on those images there.
Pumping water with the donkey.
They're mashing.
Actually
the
mashing, yeah.
baked agaves,
Like here?
and
Yeah,
that's
so that's an orno. That's basically a hole in the ground, and they throw all the agave in there. It's usually lined with rocks on the bottom. They'll throw all the agave in there. They'll set it on fire and they'll cover it, and then they'll bake the agave. So the agave is like, it's a lot like malting a whiskey or a grain. There's sugar inside that grain that you can't get to, like you can't bite into it, right? But if you roast it, that there's a reaction inside that where the sugars are brought out to the surface. Sort of like roasting a pig or caramelizing fat. Like there's a process that goes through. There's like
So does the
cliches.
smokiness in mezcal come from this process?
It does.
And
Yeah.
does what you
Oh, that's
use to smoke
beautiful.
it dictate the flavor, like the different types of woods that you're burning, or?
They use what is available to them,
Most-
whatever native.
Most of it is the agave themselves just being on fire. Like those are like on fire because they are so dense and difficult to work with. I mean, agave itself is a miracle. It's a lot of people think it's a cactus. It's actually a lily. If you have, I have lilies in my front yard. They'll go away completely, and then they'll come back. Every once in a while, they'll have one really beautiful flower that comes out of them. But in the wintertime, they're gone. They're underground.
Yeah.
Then they come back a little hardier every year. Agave are like a dinosaur lily almost. So they have that one bloom, and then they die. So
Wow.
they're asexual, so they reproduce without anything else. They have little baby agave that they kind of produce spontaneously, but then that bloom that comes out of the middle, millions of seeds are on that. So that's how they also get spread.
And is it a flower that blooms?
It's kind of like that. It's a century plant. It's also called. It looks like that. So it's like these little, almost like nectar buds. But then they die. They don't.
So you have to replant your guave field every year.
Pretty much like the best, especially in tequila. I mean, which is kind of like a negative, really. That the fields of agave and tequila are, as far as the eye can see. I mean, you can. There's nothing else. It's just agave, and they have it planted. So like, they're going to harvest this one this year, this one next year, and they have a kind of a
Rotating.
yeah. It's a plan, but there's also a danger in that because there's a pest. If there is a pest that's like threatening them all right now. But compete with that pest. That pest has all food as far as the eye can see, which is something that I think is cool about mezcal. Also cool learning about wine. You learn about so many other things, but just like genetic diversity. A lot of the agave, they don't grow in a field. The wild breeds, they need other stuff around them to pollinate them, to have some competition for pests that might disturb it. You need to have something come in and eat that thing. So I think that's part of what we're going to be doing in April with Eduardo is we'll take the pups from the other agave, take them to a different place, plant them there, and then 10 years, 15 years, they'll come back, harvest all those, and make mezcal out of them.
Crazy. So it's almost like wild mezcal, wild agave.
The
as opposed to
best,
farmed.
in my opinion, the best mezcals are wild. They're sort of like mushroom hunters, the guys that go get them. They just know this is a hot spot for this particular breed, and I think the conditions are right for there to be some there. They go and get them and make mezcal.
We have quite a few, and they're incredible.
And are they aged?
It's funny that to put mezcal in oak is sort of not traditional. Adding oak to most agave spirits is not traditional. I mean, I think that a lot of the Reposado and Añejo tequilas got that way because of bourbon and Scotch. Having a year on your bottle is huge. People are into that. But if you talk to the producers, the makers, the people who have been making it and drinking it their whole life, they're like, my spirit is done right now. Like
It's ready.
I made it like this for a reason. I want you to taste those plants that spent 10, 15, some of them are 35 years old.
Wow.
And that's where the complexity comes from, is how long that thing was alive that we baked,
It's
fermented.
crazy. So it's
Yeah.
almost like aging the plant instead of aging the product.
It's more like when a winemaker is like, I worked my butt off in the vineyard all year. So I want you to taste that fruit, this beautiful fruit. You know, they're more like a farmer than a winemaker, you know, like this beautiful fruit that I nurtured. Just that fermented juice is what I want you to taste.
Crazy. I could see how it would be easy to get obsessed with it.
Yeah, it's
And you're creating kind of a mezcal industry, right? Because it doesn't sound like there's one that really exists if you guys have the biggest selection.
It's new.
I mean, it's been the fastest growing spirit for a few years. I mean, there's going to be stuff that kind of comes and goes, but I just think that you know, as your tastes change, you'll get to something like mezcal or Scotch. I think that as you are interested in high-end spirits, you eventually will get to those most complex and most fascinating historic ones.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool how you said that mezcal's starting to blow up, and you find yourself on the right side of that, right? Where it's something you're passionate about, but it's starting to get popular, and you kind of were there in the beginning. It's kind of like I remember when the only microbrew in town was Salmon Creek Brewery. And if we would have thought to open a microbrewery then, you know, when it wasn't that popular, now there's a couple dozen in Vancouver at least.
Yeah, I always heard that it was hard. The water was hard in Vancouver, so you had to do some kind of a treatment to it, and that's why the beer took a long time to really blow up here.
I can see that, I guess.
I think one of the things that I was kind of thinking about as we've been going along is it's, to me, it's kind of apparent why you guys are still in business. And I mean, you can see the passion and what you've implemented in your restaurant, whether it be the alcohol or the tortillas or whatever, but the love that you guys have for your restaurant, your industry is pretty apparent. So
Thank you. Thanks.
And to be honest, meeting you guys, I was kind of surprised because the passion's definitely in the product and the food and the mezcal and those things. And I was expecting more of a business passion for the business side of it, but it seems like that is more of a necessity than a passion, right? From talking to you guys.
I think,
For me,
yeah, I mean, like we said, this was just a place that we wanted to eat and drink at. You know, we both love tacos and mezcal. Like it's, you know, and that's another thing that's kind of controversial. We're not Mexican, but I think that we get Mexicans that come and eat, and it's the highest compliment when they say, you know, this reminds me of home. Some of them don't even know what mezcal is, just because like it's made in such rural places, and it doesn't leave those places except to come to America.
that's interesting.
So it's cool, like, and you know, just being really in love with food and drink. I think we both research stuff a lot, and it's tough to not fall in love with these things. I mean, at least for me with mezcal, like I don't see how once you understand how it's made, like you kind of mentioned that earlier, like you have an unbelievable respect and admiration for the people that do this and have been doing this for, you know, almost a century. I mean, the process, we saw that Horno, that hole in the ground where they were roasting agave, that goes back to the Aztecs. There were times when there was nothing to eat, so they had to figure out a way to use this plant that will like mess you up. This plant is hard to work with and harvest, but then if they roasted it, they could eat those fibers. So that process goes back, you know, to like the dawn of civilization, basically. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, those ancient cultures, it doesn't seem like it takes them very long to figure out how to make a spirit.
yeah.
Because they all have them. All of them do. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
You know, it was fascinating learning more about the tacos, the tortillas, and the mezcal. You got anything, Ryan, before we end this thing?
No, I was just gonna say, if they already haven't, like, what are you guys' hours? Where are you located?
Yeah, how do people learn more about you? Social media?
Yeah, social media, our Instagram page, we do a lot of specials and stuff. through Instagram, and then our website, littleconejo.com.
What's the Insta handle?
It's little_conejo.
Okay.
And yeah, we run a lot of specials. Sometimes that are just Instagram only, just to see how powerful Instagram is. So definitely follow us on there. And our website, we're on Facebook and Twitter and everything you have to be on nowadays.
Yeah, go find their food truck or go to their restaurant in downtown. The best tacos in town for sure. We didn't even get into the different meats and stuff. Maybe we'll save that for next time. But
Yeah.
they're the best. And I love your beef tacos. That's what I get every time I go in there. You know, but
That's a fun story to talk about, but maybe for
well,
another time.
Go ahead. It will make everyone turn your radios back on.
I'll just quickly. It's the cut's called cutaneous trunky. It took me a long time to figure out what
That's
this
the
was.
cut of the beef.
Yeah, they call it rose meat or elephant ears. Are the English names for this piece of meat? It's on the breast between the carcass and the skin, and they look like elephant ears. They're about that big.
Crazy.
2 per animal. It's a really hard piece of meat to, like, you can't throw it on a grill. It's not gonna do anything to it. It's pretty gnarly piece of meat, but for learning how to cook it, it's, sometimes if it's really nice, it's maybe that much meat and then maybe 30% on the underside is fat, like a nice fat cap.
Uh-huh.
And then just when we are able to cook it really well, it's my favorite thing that we have. But yeah, we just score it, salt it, 24 hours, and then cook it. And
So how did you think to use that cut?
Mexico City's kind of the inspiration for like the central Mexico for the food, and kind of into Oaxaca, and Mexico City's just an insane place where you can get anything from all around Mexico. So we were drinking mezcal and eating tacos like crazy when we were there. But that's one of their like municipal dishes, al pastor, which
Yeah.
we have on the vertical rotisserie, and suadero is what they call it, that beef dish. I just learned, did my best to figure out how to cook it. But we braise it in a combination of mostly fat and like beef liquid that we'll reuse every day.
Got you.
And then just add more liquid, add more rendered fat to it. And then we just kind of braise it for a pretty short amount of time. If you're talking about like doing like low and slow, and the end result, like as far as classical cuisine goes, like classical French cuisine, like the doneness, it's an underdone piece of braised meat.
Mm-hmm.
We only cook it for a little under an hour, but then once we apply the chopping method to it, kind of get all the fat and everything mixed back into it, then it becomes something really cool.
It's a special type of meat, and I had no idea. But yeah.
It means snail, and I think it talks about how slow you have to cook it, because like you said, you can't put it on a grill. And yeah, I called out the blindfold taco because I feel like if you were blindfolded and you took a bite of that, anyone would say that's a taco.
Yeah, for sure.
And it has
I
an
know exactly
incredible
what
beef
that
flavor
is.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, when I first walked in there, I tried all the interesting stuff, and then I went and had the beef. And I'm like, dude, beef. That's all I want now is those little beef tacos.
All right, I always do the pork, so next time.
Have you not had the beef one yet?
No, next time
Yeah.
it's going to be the beef.
The pork's really good, but the beef's where it's at.
Cool.
Yeah, you should. Check out our website for our menus. Our menus change. We try to make each service something special. So the tortas just go on at lunch. Dinner menu. There's about 14 different tacos that we do that are all pretty interesting. And
So your lunch and dinner menus are different?
mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever been there for dinner.
I
Why
haven't.
lunch?
I haven't.
Yeah.
Lunch and
A
late
lot-
night drinks.
lot more stuff on dinner.
I'm all
Yeah.
over it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same with our lengua. The lengua, I think we had at Mexico City, was the best I'd ever had.
Yeah,
And
we
I-
do beef tongue at dinner. We do a really slow cooked lamb for every night. It's
Really?
wrapped in banana leaves and avocado leaves. Pack into it and cook it super slow.
So hungry.
Put a little smoke on it.
Yeah. Lamb cooked that way. There's nothing better. Yeah. I was in Argentina, and our cook we had one night he cooked a whole lamb over a fire, and I was like, yeah, it'll probably be good. It was the best thing we ate all week. You know, the skin was so crispy, and it was just like it was something that like I never had before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had Wanako, which is like a llama, and you'd see them running around. They're a wild animal, and the chef's like, "Here, try this," and it was cold, and I ate it. I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty good. Kind of tastes like a cold pot roast." And he goes, "It's Wanako," and I said, "What's Wanako?" And he pointed at a picture. I'm like, "Oh," so yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Well, thanks for doing what you guys do because we don't have to drive into Portland for good food anymore, right?
It's our pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah,
For the
thanks.
support.
Okay. Thanks everybody. Instagram, Facebook, light those things up.
Yeah, subscribe on our YouTube channel. Subscribe on our, throw your email address in on thehuntforsuccesspodcast.com. Help us reach more people and help out, our guests and our small business owners that come on. And help us, help you, help them.
All right, everyone. See you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.